one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, could I have Pastor Greg Withrow from Assembly of Christians please open us up in prayer?
Please bow your heads, please. Heavenly Father, Lord God, your word in Proverbs chapter 3 tells us that those who find wisdom and knowledge are blessed. And your word says that wisdom and knowledge are of far greater value than gold or silver or precious jewels. Those that are seated up front today need all the wisdom and knowledge that they can get. Lord God, making decisions for a community requires a great deal of time, hopefully for everyone, on their knees before you, seeking to know the right thing to do. I believe that all of us here that are a part of this community love this community. Lord, you've placed us in a good and caring community, so much better than many around us, Lord, but it's ours. And so we're here to ask for guidance from you. We know that those that are seated in the chairs are here to hopefully bring good wisdom and knowledge to the table as well, to help those seated up front to make the very best decisions they can make. I pray, Lord God, that everything that is done here in this room this day is honoring and glorifying to you. And we pray this and lift this up in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Okay, up next, we have the public hearing. Mr. Manning, if you want to come on up. A request for approval of the 2018-2019 general fund budget.
Good evening. I want to thank the Finance Committee, who spent numerous hours working on the budget that's being presented tonight.
Okay,
And
let me at first open the public hearing. I need a motion to open the public hearing.
I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion. Second.
Okay, motion, support, discussion. Seeing none. Okay, go ahead.
Nope, let me do a roll.
We can, we got to do a roll call.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Richburger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye. Motion's passed 7-0. Now you can go.
Thank you.
And we'll have comment time as well.
Pardon me?
We'll have comment time as well
Okay.
under it, so.
The general fund budget for this upcoming fiscal year, we'll have to reduce the fund balance by $509,000. Our revenue is projected at $4,745,000. Some of the highlights: information technology is projected to end this fiscal year at $117,000. Next year, it's dropped to $88,000. Building and grounds has been decreased by $140,000. Police department has been decreased by $40,000. The roads improvement, the budget is the same as it has been for the last several years at $1.385 million. The Park Commission, money that we're going to help the parks with, has remained constant. The new thing is the library, where the general fund is going to have to help fund the library, of $147,000.
Okay. You need a discussion or comments from the public at this time. If you want to comment on that, you come on up. Okay. I make a motion, look for a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion. Second.
Motion supported. Discussion. Okay, seeing none, could you call the roll?
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Richburger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Discussion from board members? Seeing none, I look for a motion.
Oh, I have some.
Okay, go ahead.
I was letting other people go first. Well, don't get mad. Don't jump all over me. Show respect. I get that all the time from everybody else. So I'm going to vote for this so that you don't panic and think you're not going to get a 7-0 vote, but I'm not happy with the process. It has nothing to do with Mr. Manning, but I'm just not happy with the process that we use to come to this budget. And I have said this before at our budget workshops, so it's nothing new to you, but I just think that we need to find a different approach. Instead of figuring out the revenue and then dividing that up, I think that we need to figure out how we can cut spending, use less of our fund balance, and live more within our means, which is the revenue that we take in, minus the 509,000. That's my comment.
I believe the way we did it, where each department head had an opportunity to come in, we asked them to cut 10%. I think we were able to do that, and we cut significant amount out of the budget without spending above and beyond what we have on roads. I mean, you wouldn't see the deficit, not even close. I mean, we're spending $1.2 million on roads above and beyond. So I feel like we are cutting. I mean, bottom line is, if we don't want to see all the road fixes that we have, you know, then we would have $6 million sitting in our bank. But, Mr. Steiner?
You're heading down the avenue that I was talking about, and roads, of course, is one of the biggest chunks that we've got out there. This year is projected at $1.385 million. That's a lot of road money. And we discussed this a number of years ago when it was brought up about a potential per parcel fee of $75, which would have generated, you know, some decent funding. But we did not go that route. We've continued to spend the money down over the number of years. And even back when we talked about a per parcel fee, we talked to very many financial institutions and people that are in the financial world besides us, Mr. Francis, et cetera, that we shouldn't take our general fund budget down below 1/3, which is about 1.5 million. What this is gonna do by taking this extra 500 and some thousand dollars out this year, it's gonna bring us down to about 1.2. So we're gonna be pushing the limits of where we should be if we take this down to 1.2. So it's concerning, and what people are gonna notice is if we continue with this budget at this amount this year, people are gonna see a huge drop next year in what we can do with roads.
Oh, absolutely. You won't see roads getting fixed like you have in the last 6 years. Our big push, this was the last year for it. I think the road commission said between federal funding and all the fixes we're doing, we're over 3 million of work that you're gonna see in this township, which is huge. But going forward, we're gonna have to get creative. I mean, we're working with SEMCOG right now on safety grants for a turn lane on Stearns Road. There's all kinds of options we had to do to get creative for funding. We're gonna hopefully see more money coming from the state, shared revenue with Act 51 through the road commission. So, you know, Mr. Francis and I were at the road commission meeting, the federal aid, right? Federal aid, and we made sure we were there fighting for Bedford. You know, so I mean, yeah, as far as our general fund, this was a planned down spending. So, Ms. Stenberg?
Well, I appreciate your perspective and Mr. Steiner's perspective. I have a different perspective. The roads are the services to our people, to the people, I shouldn't say our people, the people who pay our salary and elect us and ask us to make decisions on their behalf and to take things away from services for them. I disagree that roads is the only place we can cut. There's a lot of other internal spending that can be cut if we just open our eyes to other things besides services. That's my opinion.
Just a quick clarification. I didn't mean just roads, but that was the big one that I was mentioning. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to things that are not already encumbered and things that we can't touch, such as salaries, FICA, insurances, stuff like that. I wouldn't be opposed to a 5 to 10% cut on some of the other items that we can cut. If there's a need for it, it's not like we can't pay for something that's needed. It would just have to come to the board.
Mr. Fredericks?
Well, excuse me, I expressed my concern at our budget meetings, and I've talked with you about it. Again, I was at the county level when the last recession came through. And we were tasked with laying off 100 people. During that period of time, the township took a substantial amount of money out of its rainy day fund to keep the township going. That's a good thing that we had it. We're down to 1.2 million now. I expressed my concern about that in the event that we have a slowdown in late 19, 20, whenever. And I agree with you that we will have to be very judicious in our spending going forward so that we don't have some issues that arise that cause us to start talking about people. Refresh my recollection, Mr. Manning, about half of our budget is people cost?
Correct. People and fringe benefits.
Yeah, people and fringe benefits
Right.
and all the things related to
Right.
people.
Correct.
So I think out of a $5.2 million budget, half of it is people, more or less. You can't get away from that. It's just part of doing business.
Right.
But I think our citizens should understand that half of our budget is related to people. I will vote for this, even though I had some concerns. I expressed them to the supervisor and I expressed them at the meeting. Again, a lot of it is what's going to happen in the future, and we can't see it. We'll just do the best we can. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Clements?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that while I don't disagree with the budget, I think I still struggle stylistically with how we're going about it. I agree with Nancy. I think some of our arguments are different. What concerns me is that by passing the budget as is, we are just blanket saying, we know we're going to burn down our savings. And I would prefer, probably like the way most of us run our household finances, that we take a look at those critical and additional needs as they come along, as opposed to just writing them into history tonight. I'll also say I'm not a full-time, I don't oversee any department, so I realize I'm asking a lot of the three of you, and I don't negate that. But it concerns me that it's very easy to approve a $5.2 million budget. As we sit here tonight, we don't know what additional revenue didn't get spent in 17, 18 that may carry forward, which may help to decrease and minimize this spending. We also don't know some of the implications, as Lamar mentioned, that are going to impact our budget that we can't see. So I guess where I'm troubled is I wish that we would, as Rick said, not touch any of our fixed legacy personnel costs, roughly half the budget, but for the rest of the budget, do some type of percentage reduction so that as needed, knowing full well that there's going to be need. But at least we're looking at it real time and we're making decisions in the moment about what's important, as opposed to tonight casting a broad net. Thank you.
I think we did that. I mean, we asked each department to go 10%. I mean, so, and we went line for line with
Yes.
these people. And
Right.
anything that was extra or anything that was able to be brought down, we did.
Correct.
I mean, if there's other areas that somebody's seeing that could be cut, let's talk about them. Because the meetings we had and that I sat in, and I mean, we cut where we could. Now, yeah, Nancy, you talk about legal fees and engineering fees, but, you know, so, okay. I look for a motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that we approve the budget for fiscal year 18-19 in the general fund appropriation resolution as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Francis. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Okay, item 1B, request for approval of the 2018-2019 special funds budget. I look for a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, motion supported, discussion. Seeing none, could you call the roll?
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye. Do we have any comments from the public on this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Manning?
Special funds consist of fire, police, park, transit, and Metro Act, along with several, in the park fund, library, along with several SADs. The SADs, we bring the money in, and then we spend the money out for bonds or roads or whatever. The projected budget for 18-19 for the fire has been reduced $200,000 from the estimated for this current fiscal year. Police has been reduced by $20,000. Parks has been dropped by 10. And the library has been decreased by approximately $30,000. And DDA budget has been decreased by almost $500,000 from projected for this year of $1,059,000 down to $577,000. That's all I have.
Okay. I look for a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, motion supported, discussion. Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Discussion from board members? Ms. Tinnevery?
Yes, I'm a board member. No, actually, I've gone through this, and I think that they've done a pretty good job, all departments, so I have no issues with the special revenue funds.
Any more discussion? Okay, seeing none, I look for a motion. Mr. Fredericks?
Mr. Supervisor, I move that the Township Board approve the Special Revenue Funds Appropriation Resolution for 2018-19 as presented.
Second.
Motion supported by Mr. Francis. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Manning. Okay, number 2, approval of the agenda. Okay, 8K, request for approval to reduce the minimum bid on the 2008 Ford Crown Victoria needs to be changed to the 2000 Ford Ranger. Other than that, I look for a motion.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Support.
Okay, motion supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 3, consent agenda. The agenda committee reports. A, the committee recommends to the full board to approve and place on file the minutes of the May 15, 2018 regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board. B, the committee recommends to the full board to appoint Todd Hirschberger to the Fire Advisory Board for a first term ending 12/31/2019. I look for a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Support.
Motion supported by Ms. Tinnevery. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. We have no presentations tonight. Number 5, public comment. Comments limited to 2 minutes, and this is the time to comment for board agenda items only. So come on up.
Hello, my name is Kristen Nussbaum. Up until the last 5 years, I have lived 26 years in Bedford. After marrying my husband, who is an Ohio teacher, it made more economical sense for us to move to Ohio. I am part owner of Barron Insurance along with my sister Amanda Mills and my father Jerry Barron. My sister Amanda Mills serves on a board for the Lewis Avenue Corridor Committee. Together, we have invested a lot of time trying to help make our community a better place. Barron Insurance is located in the heart of downtown Temperance. As a team, we have served Bedford Township over 9 years, my father and my sister much longer. Our agency is a huge supporter of Bedford Township, not just financially, but with our time and with our heart. All of us currently live outside Bedford Township for different reasons, but we have all been very passionate about Bedford and giving back to the community that treats us so well. I was recently made aware that a vote is discussion being made as to whether myself and other non-Bedford residents can participate on Bedford community boards or committees. To be completely honest, I was heartbroken and very angry at the same time. We have always looked at Bedford as our home. I support many Bedford businesses, both personally and through our business. Why does it matter if I live in Bedford or not when my business and passion lie here? I have given much of my time and energy to helping this community prosper and have hopes and plans of helping make Bedford a better place to live, for families to grow, and businesses to prosper. My husband and I just recently bought land in Temperance and will be moving back this way. However, this address is considered Whiteford Township, even though our kids will go to Bedford schools. Now I'm even more worried that I won't have the opportunity to participate in Bedford Township committees and boards, even though I will be living in Temperance. We choose to move this way to be closer to Bedford and get more involved. To not say or have an input as a business owner and what goes on around our business feels a bit discriminating. We choose to keep our business in Bedford and be part of the community because we love this community.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
Good evening, Logan Tisdale. We're talking about finances tonight, and yet I think we were talking at the last meeting about sharing the cost with the school for sharing a deputy. That's going to cost us, if we approve that, I don't know if it was approved, at $43,000. What happens if the elementary schools want a police officer? When does it become the township's responsibility to share that cost? Why doesn't the sheriff eat that up in his own budget, rather than us having to pay for it? And I'm not against having police officers in school, but if the elementary schools want them, we got Jackman Road, Douglas Road Elementary School, we got the junior high school, there's $126,000 or $129,000 right there. The simple truth is that should not be our responsibility as a township to be taking care of the school system. They have their own budget to do that, and I think that that's something that they should do. And we can't even pay for 10. The bottom line is on the last thing here, we're paying for 10 deputies and we're only getting 9. And that's in September of this year. Last year, September of 2017, we're paying for 10 deputies and only getting the services of 9. In March of this year, we're only getting the services of 8, but we're paying for 10. If we can't keep the control over the people that we already have contracts with, how are we going to take more financial responsibility for these other people that we're going to take on? You know, the fire department's going to need some things in the past or in the future that we're going to have to take care of. $43,000 is a lot of money. And I just don't see how you can be financially responsible when we start taking on the responsibility of what the sheriff's department should be taking on, and they have the finances to do it. And if they don't have the finances to do it, they ought to work it out with the public schools and how they can get people in there to protect our students. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance. I wasn't planning on speaking, but as I looked through this, I want to speak to this policy regarding the boards and commissions. I do believe that we need to restrict the numbers of people that are on the boards based on the fact, especially some are paid and some are not. I do believe that for some of the policies, such as the park board, and some of the other ones that have advisory boards, that they should be the authority in regards to choosing who they want to do for replacements on their committees. As far as residents, imperative. Imperative that our residents be the ones that are speaking on these boards. Nothing against anyone individually. The businesses have their voice. It's called the BBA. And that's where they need to take their voice and where they need to make their commitment to the community that their business is in. But the residents, those that live here, should be the ones on the board. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, staff reports. 6A, request for approval of a resolution amending the 2017-2018 general fund budget. Dave Manning? You're up again.
Thank you. And going through the finances for the current fiscal year that we're in, it became necessary to adjust some of the budget items to reflect what the actuals will probably be. Property taxes have been reduced $25,000. We got the delinquent taxes from the county. Property admin fees will go up $5,000. And all the changes will result in an increase of $1,350 in the fund balance appropriation. I did not try to go through and adjust each line item. If I thought the money was there for a cost center department, I left it as is, rather than trying to up and down each line item, So there's really no big changes in this.
Any discussion from board members? Ms. Tennevery?
Well, I mean, we don't do a line item approval for the budget, so it's very appropriate for you to be able to move things around within a cost center, would you call it? Am I to understand that on the first page, the increase is, or the decrease is in parentheses and the increase is not?
Correct.
And we're increasing our legal fees by $25,000?
Correct.
Okay.
One reason for that is the employment attorney was not budgeted. And I'm anticipating that the bill is going to be probably around $20,000, because he didn't bill us last year, so I'm hoping he bills us this fiscal year. So that's the reason for that large increase.
Okay.
Okay, any more discussion from board members? Seeing none, I look for a motion. Mr. Frederick?
I move to approve I move to approve the resolution amending the 2017-2018 general fund budget as presented.
Motion supported by Mr. Clements. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Clements?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 6B, request for approval of a resolution amending the 2017-18 special funds budget. Mr. Manning?
Like with the general fund, I did not try and go through and adjust each line item up and down. I just looked at each individual fund to see if there was enough money in there to cover the anticipated expenses for the rest of this fiscal year. Fire district, I had to reduce the property tax revenue by $28,000. That was a big one there. Police fund delinquent taxes are $12,300. And the library, we had a $1,500 adjustment. So, like I said, there's no big dollar amounts that we're asking for the budget to be amended. Just small amounts in each separate fund. Does anybody have any questions regarding this, or?
Mr. Fredericks?
Would you go back, you said something about reducing the fire district fund? I don't see any numbers here. Maybe I misunderstood you.
Yes, property taxes.
Oh, the property tax. Okay, I'm
Right.
sorry. Okay.
They will not equal the budget
That's
amount.
Fine, thank you. I wasn't sure I understood what you said. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I look for a motion.
Move that we approve the resolution amending the special funds 2017-2018 budget as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Thanks, Mr. Manning, for coming tonight. Item 6C, request for approval to accept the offer received for the sale of the ladder truck. Chief Massingill, come on up.
Good evening. The first item I have for you is the ladder truck. As you know, we discussed in the last couple meetings, it's out of service. It's been out of service for a number of months now, and it does not appear that the cost to repair it would exceed the cost or what we would recoup if we were able to sell it. We have checked around, we've checked with many manufacturers. Initially, we got no offers for the ladder truck. We've sort of leveraged our relationship with one of the manufacturers, and they've come back and agreed that they would offer $6,500 for the sale of the ladder truck for parts. We could put the ladder truck out for bid or try sealed bids, but generally somebody's going to have to come in. We would have to be careful about who we sold it to, take the emergency equipment off of it, and incur the costs to do that, to make it so that we could sell it to anyone. If we thought there was any other manufacturer that was out there that we could contact to see about the viability, then we would have. We don't believe that it would do anything except for delay getting it out of the truck bay and freeing up that space if we were to put it out, but we're looking for to see what the board's pleasure is at this point with the ladder truck.
Real quick for the public, why don't you update us how we're at a point where we're selling our fire truck that is a $500,000 truck at one point in time for $6,500? Could you kind of update them?
So the truck is 26 years old. We were told when we ordered the new truck that we've got coming in, it should be here in about April of next year, maybe May of next year, depending on the delivery date. But we were told at that time we should be happy with about a $30,000 return, because a 26-year-old ladder truck just doesn't have value. It has exceeded the NFPA recommendation for the use of the truck, so there wasn't a lot of value in it. Frankly, they said it would probably be shipped overseas to another country that didn't have the mandates like we have. So we didn't expect to get much when the engine went out of it, and what we've been told is it would be around $30,000, maybe $40,000 to repair the engine and get back on the road, and we'd still be left with a 26-year-old vehicle for the next few months while we're waiting for the ladder truck to come in. Given the age of it, the risk of it, it just didn't seem prudent to spend that kind of money when we couldn't even be sure that we would recover after the year.
And just so everybody knows, we had a little bit of bad luck with it, that we had a major engine issue with it. We fixed it because we needed the truck.
Correct.
In service, and within a month, it had another major motor issue.
Correct.
You know, that was beyond what we were willing to do. So at this time, you know, we're getting by, you know, so.
Yeah. I mean, it's a difficult recommendation to not get it back in service, but even if we did put the money into it, it would be a couple months worth of repairs to it, and we would be that much closer to when the new truck's going to be in, so.
Mr. Steiner?
Chief, just for clarification too, and I think we talked before, besides the engine, even if you had the money to put a brand-new engine in the truck, you've had other issues with that truck besides. So just, again, give people a quick synopsis. It's not just an engine. There's electrical issues that you've had and other issues that.
Right, we've got, and it needs other work as well. It was scheduled for brake work. It was scheduled for some other maintenance items before it went out of service. It was another $2,500 to $3,000 that needed to be put into it. So even in repairing the engine, there's still some routine maintenance work that needs to be done just to keep it on the road. In the past year, we've had 4 or 5 significant breakdowns in different components. The wiring has had, we had an electrical fire in the dashboard. And it's just been, as can be expected of a 26-year-old fire apparatus that's been used you know, it's used pretty hard when it's used. We run them pretty hard. It can't be expected that components aren't going to continue to fail if we were to replace
Okay.
the engine.
Mr. Fredericks?
We have mutual aid agreement with Toledo and Monroe, and Captain Kirk might be able to beam us up a truck. But since we have that, I feel that getting rid of this hunk of iron, is because that's really just about what it is. And I was over there the other day, and Kathy Bonkowski was taking out stuff that we can save, we can keep, put into the new truck, and it's just taking up space. Putting $40,000 in it to maybe get 20 back if you sold it, it doesn't make very good return on investment in my view. So I'm in support of you getting it out of there, more or less, and continue to work closely with Toledo and or Monroe if we happen to need it. Thank you.
Okay. I look for a motion.
Do you want a specific amount?
I would.
Go ahead.
65? Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the chief to sell the existent ladder truck that is not operational and exceeds repair value, for him to accept $6,500 for that, to include, I'm assuming, removal? Okay.
Okay.
I'll second.
Motion supported by Mr. Frederick. Discussion? Seeing none.
Well, just one question. Does you have the title, the clerk has the title, clerk has all the information in? Good, thank you. I'm just asking that question. Thank you.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 6D, update on the repairs needed at Station 2, Dean Road, Lambertville. Chief?
So a number of weeks ago, when some storms came through, it caused a power surge at Station 2 that affected a lot of our equipment. We had some difficulty getting the trucks out because the generator failed, the garage door openers failed, and a number of other electrical components. We were able to get the vehicles out and respond, but then when we had companies coming in to repair them, the garage doors were repaired, but the generator is beyond repair. So we've had the insurance company come out because kind of a shoot from the hip number that the generator company gave was it may be in upwards of $30,000 or $40,000 for the replacement of that generator because of the, or in some part because of the condition of the rest of the wiring and in the building itself. So there was some wiring upgrades that would be needed. We met with our insurance adjuster, and I believe we're going to be insured up to about $25,000. So he recommended at this point that we put the work out for bid, since it's going to be a significant amount of money, that we put the work out for bid, we get a firm number that they can work with and bring it back to the board. So really, I don't know that there's any action that the board would need at this time, but I just wanted to update you folks on what was going on over there. We've made some provisions and done some work on the garage doors, so in the event of failure again, we can get them up a little easier and we'll be able to respond in a little more timely manner.
Mr. Frederick?
Mr. Kohler, our building official, is also a licensed electrical inspector. Has he been involved in all this? And so that he, I mean, if we're going to talk about bidding all this out and going, he has got to be a key in all of this. So how is he working in here?
And I spoke with Mr. Kohler about it, and he also recommended, the name escapes me, but a gentleman, a resident of the township, and said that he'd be willing to meet over there and take a look at it, as well as with this gentleman that he recommended. He is a sort of a subject matter expert, so that we can develop some sort of parameters for the repair on it. But he hasn't visited the site yet. Only today did the insurance adjuster get back with me and say, yeah, start working towards a resolution from the township's end to get some pricing together.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, because I know he wired my house. So therefore, you know, he knows what's going on with these kind of things. So he should be really a critical element in all of this, so that we know, one, he's going to make the inspection anyhow. So whatever we go and do, he's going to come in and inspect it. So he ought to be ahead of the curve so that we don't have a mess at the end. And he said, whoops, that's a red tag here and that ain't right there and something else. So I recommend strongly that he be part of the lead on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
I don't have one.
Or, oh, we didn't make a motion. Okay, thank you, Chief, for the update. Okay, item 7A, old business, request for approval of a modified resolution to establish the Springbrook Subdivision Road Special Assessment District role. Ms. Hirschberger?
Simply, we're changing this from a 10-year to a 5-year spread of the roll. Because the amount was 2,000 and less, I was advised to reduce the roll to 5 years. That's what originally the people were told in that neighborhood, that it would be 5 years, not 10. So the resolution is just to amend that to a 5-year. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve the amended resolution to establish the Springbrook Subdivision Road Special Assessment District role as presented.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported. Discussion? Mr. Frederick?
The interest rate of 3.25%, where was that established? That established in the
fine.
original?
Yes,
Okay, that's what I wanted to,
yes.
in the original special assessment district. Thank you.
Correct.
That's all I need.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Hirschberger votes aye. Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 7B, request for approval of the cost recovery ordinance. Mr. Goldsmith?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. At the last meeting, the board reviewed the, what I'll call the first draft of the proposed cost recovery ordinance. Several suggestions were made by board members during that time. Those changes have been made. They were highlighted or underscored for the board's review. I have discussed this matter with Chief Massengill. He is, I believe, very satisfied with the changes that were made, finds them to be appropriate and will be useful to the fire department in collecting expenses that are appropriate to collect. You might notice that there is some exception for Bedford Township residents when it comes to collection of costs to the extent that they have insurance coverage, but for negligent, criminal, illegal, or intentional acts for which insurance coverage would most likely not be available, those people would still be responsible under the assessment process that's set out in the ordinance. So residents who engage in, for instance, a bomb threat or activity of that nature would be susceptible to being charged for the cost of the response.
Okay. Discussion from board members. Ms. Tinnevery?
I'm concerned about your comment about our residents being assessed. And negligence can be me going to bed and forgetting to blow out a candle and my house burns. So, I mean, I have insurance, my insurance would probably pay, but that's not the point. The point is, someone who doesn't have insurance could be in the same thing. I mean, there's too many things that negligence can be defined as, and I'm still concerned, as I was before, that there are too many opportunities here to charge our residents who are already paying for fire protection.
Chief, do you want to come up and address that concern, or? I know I have called you because I had a resident call about his garage that burned down. He was concerned that he didn't get back as much money of his insurance claim because it was taken out. That's not how it works, according to.
The intent is, well, first and foremost, the cost recovery ordinance we've had one in effect for a number of years. I'm not sure how long, but this is something that's not new. So it's not like we're going to just newly start recovering these costs, but the intent of it is just to offset the expense to all of our residents by having the ability to recover some costs from the insurance companies from the residents that are using this service. So, oh, I'm sorry.
My understanding was that it was basically utility companies when these mass things have happened, and I see that very slightly in here. I see it more directed to our residents. So my question then, for the public's benefit, is if we've always had it, what's new?
Well, what's new is the avenue for recovery for the utility companies. So most of that, and like I said, the cost recovery, as the supervisor has expressed, the cost recovery for our residents isn't something that's new because he fielded phone calls this year about it, because it's something that has been done in the past and continues to be done. But the largest, I would say probably the biggest change that we've had is the ability to bill for utilities.
So
or
we
the
couldn't
utility
do it
companies.
before, but this allows us to do it.
Correct. The addition of the utility
Okay.
company in there, it now allows us to recover costs from the utility companies. In the past, when we've tried and we've contacted utility companies when we run down wires for 4 or 6 or 8 hours, they said, yeah, we've got a fund that will cover that. All you have to do is send us your cost recovery ordinance that shows that you can do it, and we will compensate you. And we didn't have the ability to do that because it wasn't included.
Okay.
Now, we have, clearly, there's some other things that we cleaned up. While we were addressing it, we did clean up some things. I think Mr. Goldsmith spent a good amount of time making sure that the other ordinances matched up with this in cleaning up language. So it wasn't the only change, but when we set out to address this, it was mainly aimed at the utility, or cost recovery for utilities.
Okay.
Any more discussion? Mr. Frederick?
Just counselor, if you would give me kind of a timeline on this, because I want to be sure it's clear. The individual violates this ordinance. The fire chief goes forward, does what he's supposed to do. The treasurer goes forward and says, I'll mail an itemized invoice to the party. The individual doesn't pay. There seems to be, in the collection of the assessable costs, if the responsible party defaults in payment of the assessment of the costs, who is the one who makes the decision to go forward to the courts?
My opinion?
Yeah.
And it's not
It's not here,
succinctly
that's why.
stated here, that's always a township board.
Okay,
That's
I just
always
wanna
a
be sure
township
that
board.
That's the
To
story.
proceed,
'cause
to
I-
proceed with litigation, it's always a township board decision.
I wanted to be sure that this board understood that this isn't the fire chief saying, okay, lawyers, go get them. It's not the supervisor saying, lawyers, go get them, but rather this is an incident that comes before the board. I mean, the township board can appeal that. But if they don't appeal, the preceding paragraph takes over.
Correct.
And your opinion is that that would be only directed by the township board?
Only way it should be legally done is
Thank you.
by direction
Thank
of the
you.
board.
I just want to be sure.
Okay.
I don't want to lay this on you.
I appreciate that.
I look for a motion.
I have a
Oh,
question.
Mr. Hirschberger?
In the past, the clerk has always sent these out. Are we changing this to the treasurer now?
It's set up that way. If it would work better to have your office do it, I certainly have no objection to that. I don't want
Well, I
to
have
take,
no objection to one more thing being out of my office. But it has
However,
been
it would-
past practice that I have sent the letters out and the money has come to the treasurer for payment.
however it would work best and most efficiently. It's not a statutory obligation of either the elected clerk or the elected treasurer, but if it works better with your office doing it, then I would say, let's make that change. It can easily be made, and the board could approve that. So,
Yeah, in the past, the fire chief would bring me the costs. I would pull the ordinance, charge per what the ordinance tells us, send a copy of that ordinance with the letter, instructing them that they had so many days to pay the treasurer.
so if it's the board's pleasure to continue with that process, then by all means, continue with that process, because it sounds like it's an established procedure that's worked well in the past. I might also add that Chief Massengill and I will be, before the next meeting, presenting the board with a resolution that's referred to in this ordinance so that we have a cost schedule to present to you. Some discussion could be made at that meeting, and the appropriate figures can be plugged in. But I want to defer to Chief Massengill and his area of expertise as to what those costs should be to be considered by the board for the resolution. So, point well taken, Madam Clerk. So that is a change that can easily be made, and sounds like it would be a good idea to do it that way.
So do we want to make a motion on this item then tonight, or are you saying you're coming?
No, I would prefer the board to adopt, to make a motion to adopt the ordinance, and then let's, with the requested change by Madam Clerk, and then we can go through the required publication process. Next meeting, we'll have a schedule, and hopefully that resolution will be adopted, and we'll be all set to go.
Okay, I look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Steiner? Somebody?
All right.
I move that we approve the cost recovery ordinance as presented, with the provisor that the clerk would be the one that would be handling the billing and accounting for that, as we discussed.
I'll second.
Friendly amendment in section 6.
Correct.
Accepted.
Okay. Discussion? Just call the roll, please.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 7C, request for approval of the proposal to provide audit services for Bedford Township. Ms. Hirschberger?
Again, this is the proposal that was provided. Mr. Francis made the changes that he thought were appropriate, and it's coming back to this board to get approval to go forward with this information.
I support that motion. Is that a motion, Trudy?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Supported by Ms. Tinnevery. Discussion? Okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 8, new business. A, request for approval of vouchers for payment. Ms. Hirschberger?
I'd like to make a motion that the following vouchers be approved for payment. General Fund, $145,255,9 Fire District, $64,998.18. Police Fund, $1,733. Park Fund, $17,531.55. Transit System Fund, $16,598.08. Library Fund, $7,996.37. Water Revenue Fund, $9,500. Rehabilitation Fund, $301.42. Downtown Development Authority, $28,594.12. Sewer O&M Fund, $391,072.58. Trust and Agency Fund, $350.90, for a grand total of $683,898.62.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Francis. Discussion?
The reason the sewer O&M fund is so high, it's the normal bi-monthly charge for the operation of the plant, $385,000. That's why it's so large this time.
Okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye. Motion passed 7-0. 8, B, request for approval of the resolution to approve the ballot proposal for a .25 mil 4-year levy for the Bedford Branch Library. Let me see Lane Coombs and Jody, if you want to come on up.
Elaine Coons, Chair of the Bedford Township Library Advisory Board.
And I'm Jody Russ, Community Librarian.
I'm here as her support. This request is on behalf of the Bedford Township Library Advisory Board, that the Bedford Township Board agrees to place a new millage for 4 years in the amount of .25 mils for each year on the November 5th, 2018 ballot. This 4-year millage request will generate $273,583 the first year, and a similar amount for each of the following 3 years, for a total of $1,094,332. The estimated cost of the annual basic operation for the library is $150,000, and that would be $600,000 for the length of the levy. The proposed expenses in the capital improvement plan are $247,978. In addition to the proposed improvements, the levy fund would cover the library operation costs for approximately 5.5 years. The capital improvement plan, and the township board members have a copy of that, does not include funds for the potential replacement of HVAC equipment, which has already reached its expectancy. I didn't know they had life expectancy. Since 1974, the Bedford Township Library has served this community. As noted in the heading to your handout, since 2004, an estimated 1.5 million people have entered the building to use it in some way. At the Bedford Township April 3rd meeting, Jody Russ, community librarian, listed, outlined, and discussed the library's many programs and services, to include those things that you think of with library, and the partnering with community groups, and some were just pleasant surprises. The library's service is to Bedford Township, this community, and that community is manifested in the library building, the property of Bedford Township. The levy is not just an affirmation of the commitment to community, it declares an investment in and for the Bedford community. The last levy was 2002. The library board has been and is judicious in its use of those funds, which have lasted for 16 years. The 5 library advisory board members are stewards of the building, its interior, its surroundings, caretakers for the township property of the community trust. This levy would fund the library so the township's general fund would not need to be used for the library building expenses. The building is the generator of the levy request. Per Supervisor Perone's recommendation in an email to Jody and others to 1918, he asked us to identify the library's needs in the ways of capital expenses such as HVAC controls, maintenance, and et cetera. The capital improvement plan is our response. It prioritizes the improvements and repairs identified as necessary for the well-being of the facility. And the intent of these recommendations is to preserve and maintain the building at a high level, to be defined as a pleasant, comfortable, safe, attractive, and effective environment. This capital improvement plan verifies our commitment not only to the building's care, its appearance, its safety, its financial well-being, but to the township to which the library serves. The following brief rationales, I just picked out a few, for projected improvements are based on economy, safety, appearance, and service to and for patrons. Number 1, the control system for HVAC. This improvement would save money and improve patron experience. Presently, the HVAC system has one control for the entire building. Consider the vast space, the community room, the children's area, the main library, the quilt room, history room, and the meeting rooms. Occupied or not, each of these areas is heated or cooled at the same temperature. A central control system would permit lowering temperatures in unused areas, saving energy. LED conversion for pendant lights. It would complete the recent conversion of the library lighting project to LED, which would result in savings. Painting the interior of the building. The painting of the building is done in stages. Designated areas, those with greatest use, the community room, children's area, meeting rooms. This painting rotation cycle was last completed in 2013. It is vital to the building's appearance. Flooring repaired in hallway to restroom in men's restroom and in entry to children's area. The entry to the children's area is a high-traffic area. People of all ages go through this area. Parents, grandparents, toddlers, older children. The slate tiles have settled and one is broken, leaving an uneven surface, which creates a trip hazard. Safety of patrons of all ages is paramount. The damaged areas from there across the hallway to the men's restroom are along the same line, possibly where the slab of the previous building joins the current. Again, the raised tiles in the men's restroom constitute a safety issue. The library should be safe, comfortable, and pleasant. The sidewalk on the north side of the building is another safety and appearance issue. The building's external environment is an asset and our responsibility. Lockers for patrons' belongings. Now, this may sound frivolous, but library staff proctors exams for those students who take online classes. The person taking the test can't have any personal belongings nearby. At this point, those belongings are stored at the reference desk. However, a staff member is not always there, and that's a matter of liability. Also, those doing research in the local history room may be required to leave purses and totes to prevent photos, et cetera, being taken. And then to reconfigure surface desks in the public computer area. Recently, arrangement of shelves, tables, and chairs opened up larger areas for patrons. The reconfiguration goals are to make better use of library space and especially to provide greater, more open, personal interaction between staff and patrons. The plans will repurpose as much of the existing furniture as possible. Seal and restripe the parking lot. This is necessary to preserve what we have. The parking lot was replaced in 2015 and has not been sealed since then. We ask that you put this on the ballot so that the community can decide about their library. What we, the Library Advisory Board and librarian, can promise, and the validity of this promise stands firm upon the board's past record. We will use the funds entrusted to us prudently and always with this community in mind, the community the Bedford Library serves.
Okay, questions from board members?
I have one. Can we enlist your services to help us pass budgets? That was an excellent report.
Thank you. Okay, but you might have to give me a Manhattan or two.
We can do that, not officially through the township.
Oh, okay,
but we can do that. Very good report.
Thank you.
Very detailed, yes.
This is a building that the township owns. The money we're talking about is to operate and maintain that building. It's not to pay for the staff. The county handles all of the operation, staff and the like. All we do is maintain the building, and it's our responsibility. Now, they had, as she mentioned, the last millage is exhausted now. They're out of funds, which means the general fund is on the hook for that until we get additional funding, if and when. And we've budgeted it in there, but we'd like not to spend it for that. We think that it ought to be self-sufficient and that the millage is needed. I totally support this.
Just a question. By the way the ballot proposal is worded, is it insinuating that it's covering all expenses?
Yeah.
No, I'm saying as far as, because it's still going to cost us roughly $150-something thousand to, I just want to make sure that's clear in there, Ms. Tinderberg. Go ahead, if you have something to say.
It was worded in a manner, and you'll see where Elaine spoke about the expenses, they have listed here the projected cost for the operations yearly on that last page with the pictures. We put the pictures in for you.
Oh, I know, but the ballot's not going to have pictures.
Just kidding. No, no, no. The projected cost of the operations is included in this, and the ballot wording does allow for capital improvements and operations. It's true that if the township board, was going to fund, which in preparation, the board had to prepare in case this millage doesn't pass, but so that the township board has budgeted for the operations of $150,000 projected. However, there is no money, and we've said it over when we were talking about the budget, for maintaining the building and improving these areas that this Library Advisory Board has so greatly pointed out here and even given pictures. There is quite a bit of opportunity for liability with people tripping. In fact, if you remember last year, Barry Bushman helped the library out by including the cost of repairing all of that cement out in front. We had people tripping and falling because all of that cement had broken up and it was all grainy and pebbles and everything around there, so that's been repaired. But this board does not have the money, $172,000 annually, to put towards improving, or not really improving, but maintaining this building. And all we have to do is look at the schools and see what's happened to the schools over the years without being able to maintain their buildings. Now they're asking for $30 million or whatever, which I'm sure they need, but we need to be responsible as a board to maintain our structures. This really isn't the library asking for this, to have this millage put on. It's the Library Advisory Board, who this board has appointed, citizens of this township, who see that this facility has to be maintained, or else we're going to be wasting a structure that we've already put so much money into.
Well, that was my question, and I see it's right here. I just didn't. I talked to Mr. Francis earlier today about it to see if part of this millage was the operating cost. So if this is passed, the township isn't going to have to spend any money out of the general fund to operate it anymore. This is fully operational from this millage.
Right.
But I wanted to
what's projected, for what's
projected,
we
yeah.
don't know what else.
And I just wanted to make that clear, that, because that has been talked about. I will say this, I've been working closely with Jody since I've been in office, really. And one of the things we have talked about was controls, the HVAC system. If she were to do that, it would save the township, or the millage, $15,000 a year in operating costs. It's a 5-year payback. I don't know about control system lighting. So, I mean, some of these things on here will bring the cost to operate this place down a decent amount. I think the bulk has been done with the LED initiative. I think you're saving roughly, what, $2,000, $1,500 a month or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know what the dollar amount is, but I know it's significant.
It's something around there, so it's a good amount of money.
I just want to finish one other thing. I am so proud of this Library Advisory Board for coming up with a capital improvement plan. We, as a township board, have not been diligent to come up with one ourselves for the entire infrastructure and buildings, but yet they have taken the time, and I'm just very thankful and proud that they did this and took the time. Now, this is what they're requesting this board to approve. However, I will have to say that if you want the township board funds to pay for the daily operations, then you can
No, I'm not
shorten
asking
the
that.
amount. Okay. Because
I'm not
they're
asking
just
that.
asking for .25.
I'm not asking that.
Okay, I'm just saying that
Okay.
you can make it any amount you want.
Well, let me I just have a couple questions, because, obviously I'm could be involved with some of the things that are on here. I noticed tree removal and landscaping. There's some things that are probably obviously the tree removal, those big trees by the building that you're saying, obviously you'd have to hire that out. But some of the landscaping stuff, I mean, I just want to know that I'll still be able to work with you, on some of these items, like some of the concrete stuff, I think I could get a lot of that volunteered through the Masons Union. It's just different things like that.
It was never our intention to just do this alone.
Okay.
It's us who will be doing this.
Good. Sounds good. Because I like to really, you guys really do a great job, and are very detailed, and so I appreciate that. So, any more discussion, Mr. Frederick?
Mr. Goldsmith, this says for a period of 4 years beginning in 2018 and continuing through '22, if it's on the November 6th ballot, that's what I'm wondering. It's because when I look at this is wrong.
You're right.
I'm right, okay. I'm right, but I'm wrong.
a librarian,
It's wrong,
not a
but it's
math
right.
wizard.
Pardon?
Said I'm a
Well, the only
librarian, not a math
reason I
wizard.
say that is because if it's on the November ballot, it won't go on the tax rolls to 2019.
Well, it can. This is,
Can it go
Bill,
on
your
the
mic.
winter tax bill? That's what I'm asking.
and I'll defer to Paul
Yes.
Francis on this, but I think it can, if the electorate approves the ballot proposal, it can go on the winter tax bill, right or wrong.
I believe that's correct.
Okay, that's my.
So,
So we either got to change it to 5 years or change the ending date to 2021.
That's-
Right,
That's what
right.
I'm saying, that I had questions of both when it would go on the tax rolls and then, but the years didn't work out.
correct.
Okay.
So the question is, to the board, do you want to make it a 5-year, or do you want to make it a 4-year? If it's a 4-year, it would be 2018 through 2021. If you want it to be 5 years, it'd be 2018 through 2022. So whatever your pleasure is.
If we make it 5 years, then you would have probably a surplus, you'd think at some, there's-
Don't mention surplus.
I'm just,
We will just have adequate funds.
okay, Mr. Frederick?
Well, I guess I'd ask Ms. Timbery, since she's the liaison there, what did you as a group discuss?
If you can look at the back page.
I did.
There, okay, that shows years 5 through 10.
That's
which-
what I thought.
Which this millage won't cover. And I applaud them for this, their objective is to ask for the amount that they need immediately and show the public that they're good stewards and purchasing and keeping all these other things up. And then at the election, and that's how that got in there, the 2022, that would be the next election year, that they may put this on again for the 5 through 10 years. Because this is a 10-year capital improvement plan, not just 4 years. But once the public sees that they are responsible and their integrity proves that they're following through with what they promised to do with the money, then the public has the option then of giving them the money for those other things. And like she said, the HVAC isn't in here. We don't really have a good idea of what that would cost. And so, that's something that these things are just projected. They're not necessarily year by year or exactly what. So
So is it your recommendation to this board it be 5 years?
Yes, because it's the next election
fine.
year.
That's fine, I just,
Well, that would get you halfway there, too. So if you went for 5 and then you need another 5 for your 10-year plan, that makes sense.
The reason that they started it in 18, which would be this year, would be that the budget that the township has budgeted for would be paying up to November from our July 1st. And then their funds coming in from the public would pay for that next fiscal year.
And the current millage, or the millage that we had previously, all those funds are now exhausted, is that correct?
That's correct. That's why the township board had to budget for, there's no fund balance left in that budget, or millage money And so it's going to have to come out of the general fund if this is not approved.
When did that millage collection end?
Last year, I believe.
Last year?
Or this is the first year we've had the
2012.
budget.
2012 that ended.
I thought that was right, and that's further evidence that
Oh, I see
they
what
have
you're
been
saying.
good stewards of the money that was entrusted to them by the electorate.
Yeah. 2012 collection, that's what you're saying. But there was a fund balance built up. I see what you're asking.
Yes, yes, and they used it responsibly.
Yes, they have. Very, very so, much so.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, I look for a motion.
I'd like to move that we approve the ballot wording, changing the 4 years to 5 years, but it would be 2018 through 2022 inclusive, for the Bedford Library proposal on the November 6, 2018 ballot.
Support.
Okay, motion supported by Mr. Clemens.
What? Did I say it right?
Discussion? I just want to say thank you for the detailed
I want
plan.
to say thank you to
Looks
Elaine.
really good.
She did a
very
wonderful
detailed.
job.
Yep, spent a lot of time on it. Hey, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8C, request for Hickory Creek Plat 5 tentative preliminary plat approval. Mr. Frederick?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. You will note on the documents that you have that shows that Plat 5 will commence on Stearns Road and proceed south through a future proposed Plat 6, eventually connecting to the current Hickory Creek subdivision. While Plat 5 will only have one entrance and exit, the number of units proposed in Plat 5 are less than required for the fire department or the building department to disapprove the cul-de-sac for this particular plat. The Township Planning Department has been advised the closing of the sale on the property of Stearns Road that is necessary to construct the entrance is completed. And please note that there is one parcel on Stearns Road which will have access to the new road in Plat 5. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the tentative preliminary plat. So, Mr. Supervisor, I move that the Township Board grant tentative preliminary plat approval for Hickory Creek subdivision Plat 5, provided a second means of ingress and egress to the Hickory Creek subdivision be completed as shown on the plat plans, and subject to the conditions outlined in the letters from Monroe County Road Commission, Monroe County Drain Commission, Manick and Smith Group, and the Bedford Fire Department, and that necessary permits be secured from the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality if necessary, all of which completed prior to the application for the final preliminary plat submission.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported. Discussion. I just want to say that this is much needed, especially the fact that you're coming off Stearns Road, because the house amounts in this neighborhood are really getting up there for one entrance, and it is really needed. Plus, these lots and these homes that you're going to be building, you don't have them in Bedford right now. I mean, people are, they're going to fly off the market, so I mean, I love it.
Thank you. Well, I can tell you, Mr. Worley's owned this property for a long time, and this was coming before the other issues arose in terms of the downturn in the community, and so now he's ready to step forward, Mr. Worley, and put this project forward. I support it. That's my motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any more discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Frederick?
Yes, aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 8D, request for approval to rezone from R2A, single-family residential, to R3, single-family residential for Comanche Development on parcel number 5802-026-061-01. Mr. Frederick?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. This is a request for rezoning a 19-acre parcel on the north side of Stearns Road, just west of Prairie Woods subdivision, from R2A, single-family, to R3, single-family residential. The subject parcel is proposed to be an expansion of the current Prairie Woods subdivision. The Township Planning Commission heard from several neighbors regarding drainage, traffic congestion on Stearns Road, and issues relating to wetlands. The developer stated that they are working with MDEQ, the Monroe County Road Commission, the Monroe County Drain Commission to resolve the neighbors' issues. Stubb Street connections will be made with Prairie Woods into the new development contemplated by the rezoning. Therefore, Mr. Supervisor, I move that the Township Board grant approval of the Comanche Development Company LLC request to rezone parcel number 5802, 026, 06101, located on the north side of Stearns Road, east of Lewis Avenue, just west of Prairie Woods subdivision, from R2A Single Family Residential to R3 Single Family Residential for the following reasons. The rezoning is consistent with the Township Master Plan. The rezoning is consistent with the Monroe County Comprehensive Land Use Map. Parcels located to the north of the parcel are zoned R2A. Parcels located to the south of subject parcel are zoned R2B and R3. Parcels located on the east side of the subject parcel are zoned R3. Parcels located on the west of the subject parcel are zoned RM2. One parcel adjacent to the subject parcel is zoned C3. The rezoning is consistent with the uses and zoning of adjacent parcels and consistent with the density of the adjacent parcels. That's my motion.
Second.
Okay, motion is supported. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick.
Aye.
Mr. Steiner.
Aye.
Mr. Clemens.
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry.
Aye.
Mr. Francis.
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Thank you very much.
And Joe, we wish you no economic downturns in the near future.
Joe, is that your plan?
Okay, item 8E, request for approval of a development design standards waiver for a Toledo Steel addition request. I'm sorry, that's it, it's Toledo Steel addition. Mr. Frederick?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Issue similar to this was just here a couple of weeks ago with respect to ordinance number 65, where it's been determined that the ordinance is not reflective of new materials that can be used for drainage pipe installations. While the ordinance is being amended, waivers are required by the Township Board to use the new construction materials that are not listed in the ordinance. Therefore, I move that a waiver be granted to Toledo Steel Products Edition from the Township Development Design Standards Ordinance number 65 for drainage pipe materials required by the ordinance, and that the storm sewers be constructed in the addition with the proposed new construction materials provided. 1, the product to be installed in full compliance with the manufacturer's installation specifications. Approval of the new proposed construction materials be subject to approval of the Monroe County Drain Commission. Approval of the proposed new construction materials be subject to approval of the township engineer, and that the granting of the waiver will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property of others in the area. That's my motion.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported by Ms. Tinneberry. Discussion? Ms. Tinneberry?
Yeah, I do. Can this be the last time we do this? I mean, this is getting ridiculous that this ordinance has not been changed. We've done this several times over just in this last calendar year. I mean, this is ridiculous that we're holding up these developments and these companies because we're coming back with the exact same thing all the time. I mean, why can't we just put in there, you can use the new kind of material for drainage pipes? Is that so difficult?
Can you call planning department tomorrow, and can we get this ordinance change started?
Sure. Yeah, I've done that already.
They're-
So the
they're
answer
working
is
on
they're
it.
already doing it.
Yeah, they're working
What's to
on it.
work on? I
I
mean,
don't know.
you mean, tell me,
I can answer that. I've been beating on them too. So
I'm
I
asking
will call and.
Mr.
you don't have to.
Goldsmith, cannot we, I mean, this sounds pretty minimal, but that's me, can you just put drainage pipe materials, whatever's new?
No.
I mean,
No.
come on, it's not that difficult.
I haven't been asked to do anything yet. I think it's at the planning department, but I'll give Karen a call and see if I can help them with
Okay.
the process.
I would like
Yeah,
this to be
this
the
has been,
last one.
this has been the last, I mean, we've asked for it to be something
Well,
worked
this
on.
is holding up development, and I just think that's not what we are here for.
I agree 100%. And when we see an ordinance that's affecting, and we can streamline things, we move on it. I mean, we're working on ordinances right now. I mean, so, Mr. Frederick?
I understand your frustration because I have the same one. So why is this here again? The issue apparently is with, I don't want to blame it on our township engineer, and I don't want to blame it on the Drain Commission, but those two are the ones who will ultimately approve new materials. You can't simply say, tomorrow, anything that's new that looks pretty good, we can use. The Drain Commission's going to have input. The county, or the township engineer has input. I suggested that we just get going right now and fix it later if we have to. So I suspect, but don't know, that it's going to be on the next Planning Commission agenda, and if not, I'll put it there.
I just want to add that those two people have, the Drain Commission has approved this kind of thing, and so has Manning Smith, stood right at that podium and said that, so I don't know the holdup.
Okay. Phil, can you make a call tomorrow to make sure that they're on it, and on track?
Sure.
Okay, do we do roll call for that? Okay, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye?
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clement?
Aye.
Herschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 8E, request for approval of the Monroe County Road Commission contract for an overband crack fill for various roads. This is something we've been talking about for the last year or so with some of the subdivisions. This is what I'm talking about, with the subdivisions that had SADs, correct?
Correct.
This
That's
is-
what
this-
we've been asking for.
We've been talking about how can we help out the subdivision that spent the money to get an SAD. So this right here is gonna get the subdivisions that have done the SADs that are due for an overband crack fill to get them the help they need. So, Ms. Hershberger, if you want to kind of, there's been a little bit of change on it, I know, but,
Yeah, hopefully everyone got the change. It was a mistake, the 8 miles, it's only 4.03 miles that they'll be doing this on. And the subdivisions are listed, these are residents who have put money into their subdivisions, which are Canterbury Forest, Enchanted Forest, Harmony, Melody, Hidden Valley, and Springbrook. As long as they're out doing the crack fill on the main roads, they'll just stop in these subdivisions and do those too. I think it's the least we can do. These residents have put a lot of money into their subdivision roads on their own.
Paul, this is part of the county-wide ceiling program, right?
Correct.
So that we got
Yes.
that price too, so.
Correct.
Okay, I look for a motion.
I move we approve the overband crack fill contract with the Monroe County Road Commission for 4.03 miles for the subdivisions listed for $30,300.
Second.
Okay, motion supported, discussion?
Friendly amendment, or just an explanation. Out of that 30,300, the township shares 29,300, and the road commission shares a big 1,000.
Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Herschberger votes aye. Mr. Frederick?
Aye?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clement?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item G, request for approval for the annual Michigan Townships Association membership for the period July 2018 through June 2019. I just want to say that MTA is something that I utilize on a weekly basis, if not sometimes a daily basis. We utilize their training, so I highly recommend we continue the relationship and the membership with MTA. They do a lot for us. That's it. I look for a motion or any discussion.
I move we approve the MTA membership dues for 2018,
1819.
18-19, in the amount of $6,542.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is supported, discussion. I just want to say, if we weren't members of this, I can't imagine what our legal bill would be, because I know Trudy and myself, and I'm sure Paul, we call them every time before we call our legal team. And if
This
they
le-
tell us to go to our legal team, that's what we have to do.
Oh, absolutely.
But we definitely call them first to save money.
Good. That's
So-
really good. I applaud that.
Mr. Francis?
Just as a point of information, to my knowledge, this is the first time that we will have approved this and have refused to pay into the Legal Defense Fund. It's $196.26. The
Why are we-
motion excluded that. I just wanted the board members to be aware that that excluded,
Why is that excluded?
because the motion was made
Because-
for a different amount.
Because every year I've had to vote no because I don't want to pay the legal defense fund. That does not go for you calling them. That's part of the dues. The legal defense fund is for all the state, and we use when it comes time to fighting a lawsuit, we don't go to the MTA, we use our own attorneys, so
Okay.
they can get their
fine with that.
$196 from somebody else. That's
I'm
just
fine with
my
that.
opinion. Now, if you don't want to approve it and you want to make a motion for the legal defense fund included, but
Paul, do you see a reason to?
Personally, yes, I do, because it covers large suits where townships can't afford to pay the legal fee. The MTA steps in a lot of cases. We've seen those. I get a report every once in a while when it's drawn on that fund to help them. It's $196. It's not a lot of money, and it might come back and help us at some point. But I can understand Nancy's comments about it.
Nancy, do you agree with that? At some point, if we had to utilize it, if we didn't pay into this fund and we got in a large lawsuit, we wouldn't be able to, or are you saying, is that true, a
I've been
statement?
involved in government for 25 years. I've never seen one single person or township in Monroe County ever benefit by the legal defense fund. I do know of statewide, whatever those are called, huge lawsuits. There's a name for them, and I know Phil knows it, but catastrophic or something. And they use that fund, but they've been collecting this money for many, many years, and it's never benefited us, so. But however, I will have to clarify, Mr. Francis, that in the past, back in the 90s, and Mr. Frederick will remember this, we did not always approve. So this is the first time this board, and possibly since you've been on the board, but this isn't the first time we've denied the legal defense fund. That's just my opinion.
Mr. Frederick, what's your thoughts?
Well, I would prefer, rather than just pile a bunch of money in their pocket, if there's an issue that they are pursuing, and we get a report on what they're doing, it comes in the monthly magazine, and it's something we feel that affects us and we would like to make a contribution, we would make a contribution at that time. Rather than just send them a blank check, I would rather be a little more judicial in what we're passing out money to them, because they may run off and do something for Roscommon that has no effect for us. But that's just my view. I think I would rather wait and see if they have some particular lawsuit that they are pursuing or some particular administrative process that they're going. Then it looks like it might affect us then, and that time we could decide what we would like to make a contribution or not. Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion? Seeing none, I look for a motion.
We have one.
Or we already have one?
Second.
Second, okay. Call the roll, please.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 8H, request for discussion or approval for a policy regarding various boards or commissions in Bedford Township. Mr. Frederick?
Thank
ask
you.
for this to be on?
At our last meeting, when we were talking about a board and commission that involved the potential person being placed on it who did not live in the township, council advised that we didn't have a policy, or we didn't have any issues with that clearly set out whether or not you could have a non-resident on a board or commission in Bedford Township. So I thought, well, let's bring it to the board and let's have some discussion on A, should a non-resident be on a township board? And B, should any residents serve on more than one board. That is the issue before the board tonight. Now, we heard earlier that someone has a business here and has in fact made contributions to the township. But my view is, first and foremost, that every board or commission in the township should first be served by citizens of the township. I do understand that from time to time, there may be a slot open where an individual has a unique set of skills, or they have some other abilities that would complement and/or supplement that commission or that committee. But it should be a rarity, in my view, particularly if it's a paid board. We're paying those individuals with tax dollars that our citizens put forward. Secondly, I believe a citizen who lives in our community and serves on those boards or commissions is serving for the benefit of all of the citizens and is responsible to all of the citizens. Now, again, as I said earlier, there may be a situation from time to time in which a vacancy occurs and someone has special skill set or abilities. Clearly, I don't believe that someone should serve on two boards, other than, of course, the township trustees who have to serve in more than one board. So I gave you a memorandum. I believe it's a clear memorandum in which I have stated my position. I can understand in certain instances, like the DDA, where you have to have a specific list of individuals only because it's a state statute. My view, I don't think a citizen should serve on more than one board. Number two, the primary focus should be on Bedford Township citizens serving on a local board or commission. Thank you.
Ms. Stingerberry?
I agree with Mr. Frederick for the most part. I just don't agree with the policy. I don't think that we need to form a policy that would encumber future boards that maybe different circumstances arise. I think a mere motion from this board for a method of appointing people to committees would be sufficient. I don't think we need a policy. But I agree mostly with not having this two people on a paid board, two identical, the same person on two paid boards. But some of these non-paid boards, like the Beautification Committee, I mean, they don't get paid, and they work. They work very hard in terms of keeping our community looking very nice. And some of those people pay to go to these, what's that called when you begin? Boy, I'm telling you, I'm getting Alzheimer's. What's that?
Master Gardener.
Master Gardener, thank you, sir. You know, they pay their own way to go to that, and then if they want to plant some flowers, I can't see limiting committees like that for people who really want to just make their own community beautiful. But I agree with not having the same or one person on two different paid boards.
Mr. Frederick?
All I'm trying to do is to present a philosophy. And clearly, when the supervisor or someone comes in and says, I have a new committee and I'd like to have these people, I think we should interview them. I think we should understand what their contribution will be to that. And in the case, there is someone from outside of the township who has, as I said, a particular skill or ability, we can say, okay, you're it, you're good. But I think our first point, and the first point I tried to make, was that we should be looking to Bedford Township citizens first. That's my view. Thank you.
I don't disagree with that. Couple things. I think this board appoints, not the supervisor, not the clerk, not the treasurer. This board appoints. So at any given time, just like last meeting, when I had Stephanie come before an appointment for MCOT before we pulled off the agenda, this board could say no because she's not a resident. I look at it, she's got a particular skill set, she'd be great for a grant and loan committee, but the board doesn't agree, whatever, they don't appoint. I think you really hold yourself back and put yourself in a, you know, a possible situation to where you might have a hard time, just like, let's just say Dr. Carl with the Economic Development Committee that we would like to form in the future. He was somebody that was brought up that we would love to have part of that committee. He can't because he lives in Newport. Is he, you know, he's a superintendent of the schools. He obviously cares about Bedford, wants to see great things, but he can't. You know, same thing with, you know, the woman that spoke earlier about Barron Insurance. It's like their investment, their livelihood is there, but this board can say no. You know, if we have 5 applications with Bedford Township residents, and one of them is somebody that owns a business that doesn't live in the township, we can put priority to the Bedford Township resident. But I think if we put something in place that says, you know, you have to live in the township, we're really holding ourselves back. I mean, what if Randy Oster, from the president of ProMedica, wants to sit on our grants or some committee? Obviously, that would be a really great thing to have happen, but we couldn't if this is put in place. And the thing is, with 2 boards, would that be, like, say, the park board's elected, would they be allowed to serve on other boards? Because I know, like, there's women that are elected for the park board that sit on the beautification, that sit on, you've got, I agree, like I said, I agree, like the board, like the DDA. That board makes financial decisions for the township without board approval. You know, so that, they are a paid board.
But that's also a statutory
It's a
board.
statutory board.
Yeah.
You know, let's just say Lewis Avenue Redevelopment Committee. That board makes 0 decisions without board approval. They don't make decisions, they recommend to the board, and at that point in time, they're not a paid committee, and this board at that time can take the recommendation or not. I mean, I can say this, it was talked about a little bit at the last Lewis Avenue Committee, and, you know, the 2 of the people that are on there that are business owners were very upset, you know? So, Mr. Frederick, or Mr. Francis, sorry about that.
Well, on that very issue, the people that you were talking about are taxpayers. Might not be residents, but they do pay real estate tax.
But we're talking about residency here.
I know that. I kind of agree with the intent that Lamar has, but I would be against a written policy on it. I just think we ought to consider that when we make these appointments. As far as serving on 2 boards, I totally disagree with that. I think that's ridiculous. You ought to be able to do that. In fact, if we were to initiate that, there are 8 people that serve on more than 1 board that we'd have to displace. It's hard enough to fill some of these positions, to rule those out.
I agree.
I don't think we ought to encourage it, but we shouldn't eliminate it.
Well, you have people that want to be involved, and you can be involved with more than, like, you could serve on beautification and the compensation committee or whatever, and it's not like you're going to be overburdened by, you know what I mean? It's tough to get people involved nowadays. I mean, you guys see it. I mean, look at the applications that, you know what I mean? Unless it's, you know, unless it's like the park board, you know, we put that out there and you know, it got an interest on that because it's a paid position. I mean, it's roughly, if you attend meetings, $2,500 a year, roughly. You know, that attracts people, you know, so, Mr. Francis?
Well, the other comment I wanted to make, and forgot about temporarily, is only 2 of the boards or commissions that we're talking about are decision-making entities. One is the park board, which is elected, and the other one is DDA, which is appointed. All the other ones only make recommendations to this board for action.
Except for BZA.
I agree. I mean, I don't think somebody should be serving on 5 or 6 different paid boards. I mean, there's but keep in mind, every appointment comes before this board, and at that time, we could say, gosh, she's already involved with 2 boards, we, you know, I think, we could say no, because we don't, you know, but I think having a policy set for any of these things, more than 1 board, have to live in bed, I think we're setting ourselves up for a possible situation where we might kick ourselves. Ms. Stenberry?
Well, 2 things. One is, when you know, we don't see these. When it comes before us, it's on the consent agenda, you're recommending this person gets appointed to a certain board or committee. I don't memorize who's on every board. I mean, we got 4, 5, 6, 10 pages here of people who are on committees. So, you know, to know whether they're on another committee, maybe they were on another committee a few years ago and they're not anymore. So, I mean, if that's the case, we need to be presented with the fact that this person that you're recommending is already serves. The other thing is, there are people who have approached me that have applied for committees that never get recommended or never get, you know, on our consent agenda to be on a committee. So we're limiting by appointing, you know, Paul just said 8 people, to duplicate boards, we're eliminating some people who may want to be on them. I mean, I hear you say that it's difficult to find people, but there are people who say they've applied and they never get chosen or recommended or whatever. So I think that we have to be careful about just keeping the same people who we've always appointed to this, that. There are people, you know, who just want to keep being appointed to everything, be involved in everything, and I think that's, you know, spreading them too thin, too.
Well,
So-
I think a big thing, though, is at the end of the year, that's obviously when all the appointments, for the most part, a lot of the appointments happen. So I think at that time is a time when the board really needs to get the word out, hey, if you want to get involved in one of these various boards, now's the time to do. But throughout the year, if somebody resigns or something like that, and you have an application sitting there, I mean, it's about timing, too. You want to fill the position. You know, so a lot of times if you get, you know, somebody that gets an applicant in for a vacancy, it might have already gotten filled. So, I mean, it's,
There's 7 on here that are, the committees aren't complete. So there's 7 people right there that, you know.
and how many applications do we have on file for each one of those 7 committees?
We have applications.
Well,
I'm
we have,
just not sure for which committees, but we do have applications.
but we haven't published it either, or put it on our website and whatever.
Mr. Clements?
Well, I certainly won't ever speak for Lamar, but I think the spirit of what he was saying is, what I'm hearing is most people agree with. We ought to consider residents first. He even caveated in his memo that there's going to be times where there are going to be exceptional circumstances. How labor intensive would it be in our package when we get a board recommendation for there to be 2 things in there? A list of other boards that that person serves on, so we would have that information. Additionally, a complete list of the applicants for that cycle. I think that would give this board a lot of information, and we could then be a little bit more judicious with some of our appointments with those 2 things. Is that incredibly difficult from a time management or a labor standpoint?
It would be easier to send just the whole list out than to keep changing, going, okay, now.
As long as the list is current, but like,
Right.
I know I've
Because we
gotten a
keep
list a
a
couple of
current-
times, it's not current at all.
We have a current one in the computer under company,
Okay.
and we can just send that. We
That would be
try
fine,
and keep it
even if when
updated.
we got the digital package, if it could be attached that way, that would be easy. Because I think Nancy's point is we just want to have a little bit greater knowledge of who these people are and what pool are they pulling from. Because I too have been addressed by someone who never gets selected, and it's hard to even tell them where to begin because you have no idea who they're competing against or what the circumstances were.
Right, we,
So,
we
there-
can send that, and then we can send whoever has
There-
applied.
There's
I
certain
think that would
boards,
solve a lot of what's,
well, there are certain boards too, though, like planning and, you know, BZA, where, you know, you do look at the applications and you do, you know, try to select the person you think is gonna serve best for that board. And there's been applicants in the past where it's like, you know, maybe they would be better on a different board, you know, but, Mr. Steiner?
You got to me.
You need, to, you know.
No, a lot of good comments. You know, I agree with Nancy. We don't need to have a policy, but I think it would be a good idea if we just had just a memo of understanding, okay? So we all are on the same page and understand. And I don't have a problem, I get what everybody's saying about residential, but if you're a taxpayer in this community, I think you should have an opportunity for these boards. I don't care whether it's a business or a residence, you are paying money. In fact, some of the businesses, of course, they're paying a lot more money to do business here than a resident is. I'm not saying that that makes them preferential, but they should have some kind of right to some say what goes on. And unfortunately, just like millages and everything else, people that own businesses, if they don't live here, they can't vote. So their property for their business could be taxed. They don't have any say in that. So I think if we just had a general guideline that we go by, and then there also are boards that we don't get applicants in for. And as you said, certain ones that are specific, planning, BZA, a little bit more knowledge. I've looked at applications that says, have you ever attended one of these board meetings? No. Do you have any experience on this type of? No, but I would like to because I think. Why would you appoint somebody? Now, they may be okay, but they need to explain that better.
And
I think all applications, send us all applications then. If we're hearing that people are putting applications in and nobody ever hears their name and never sees them and never knew that they applied, we should just see all applications. But again, just a general guideline of how we want to handle this as a board. And who knows, the next election, half of us might be gone, and then you've got more people coming on.
All of us might be gone.
And all of us might be gone. But you know what? You may not discuss it again, and then, 2 years in, people go, well, wait a minute, what about this and what about that? At least a guideline to go by. Doesn't have to be a formal policy, because again, there are going to be circumstances where there is somebody that could be very crucial to that board that may not live here with a perfect skill set.
And I do go to, like, for planning, if we have a group of applications, I talk to Jody, or not Jody, but Karen and Jody in planning, and Mr. Frederick?
We beat this to death, so let's move on to the next topic. I think we've had, my intent was to have some discussion. I think what we've had is some discussion. We'll talk about a little bit more of the process. I hate policies. The reason I hate policies is because half the time they're lost, they're forgotten, nobody even knows what they're about. So let's just see how the next opportunity arises, and if we have to tweak it, fine. So let's bury this and move on.
Okay, moving on to 8H, request for discussion or, 8I, request for approval of the fireworks permit for the June 22nd, 2018 Township Fireworks Display. Ms. Hirschberger?
I don't know, TC, did you want to do this, or you want me to go ahead?
It doesn't matter, I'll take it. This is a request that gets made from the park board every year, ensuring that this board approves the permitting, and so that the fireworks go off in full compliance with all regulations. Nothing about it this year is different or any modifications in any year previous.
I support that motion.
Okay, motion is supported. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 8J, request for a decision on whether to offer a new Class C liquor license for issue. Ms. Hirschberger?
As my memo states, we were advised that we have a new Class C liquor license. It was issued to the township. We don't know when, we don't know why. I did not receive any kind of notification that we even had one. It was a big surprise to all of us. So at this time, the township board can choose to go ahead with the proceedings and issue this permit, or we have the right to hold it and issue it at another time. Completely up to the board what we do with it at this point.
Can I just ask how did somebody come and tell you that wants it, or how did you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, they
Somebody
came
tried
in.
to get it from the state and thought they had it and realized that it's got to go through the board, so.
Oh.
I just want to say that I'm the one that asked Trudy to put this on because we've had a lot of interest in liquor permits in the last 6 months. There's mainly all in Lambertville.
Temperance is a dry city, temperance. that's
Temperance
why
is a
it's
dry city. But, a good point Trudy made was, do we want to hang on to this for a future something in Temperance? And then with the Lewis Avenue Redevelopment Committee a couple days ago, Tim Lake said there are ways to capture liquor licenses through the state and other ways to do it other than hanging on to it. I'd have to have him here to kind of explain how that works, but there is ways for redevelopment, communities and stuff like that to capture, so. Mr. Frederick?
My view is that we make this available immediately. There are businesses who are established in our community who would be able to expand their business, who would be able to maybe even make some additions to their business in terms of expansion. I think that we should make this available immediately.
Is that
I
your
agree with you.
motion?
Yeah.
I'll second that if it's your
Is
motion.
that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, motion, supported, discussion?
I'm
I just
sorry,
wanna say-
who supported.
Oh, Mr. Steiner, I just want to say I agree with you.
I don't know who did.
There's been multiple, like I said, multiple requests, and for us to just sit on it when we have, I think 5 people have called right around there that have some pretty cool opportunities, and for us to sit on it and let that happen, I think would be not good, so I support that. Any other discussion?
What is the process by which we plan to make that available? Is it an established process, or are we just going to fall
It
back
is.
on? Okay.
Well,
It is,
that
and
was
I've
one question that was,
included it.
that was a question that was raised the other day, is how, what process is in place and how did it ever get there? Because from what Mr. State Representative Shepherd said, is it's kind of unique that we have that control as a township. Not many people in the state do that. You go to, that's why there was a surprised person when they went to the state, and they're like, the state's like, oh, we can't give this to, type
So the
deal.
process in the package would be the
We make a
process?
recommendation.
Okay.
It
Right.
would be the same as last time.
And that's why I included ordinance 90. Because the process is explained in ordinance 90. And I simplified it a little bit with the bullet points that I
Okay.
created.
Okay.
Are there any board members that feel it might be an advantage to us to try to encourage something to be developed in Temperance with this license, or not? Because if we don't say that, they're free to go anywhere.
I don't think we should, to be honest with you, Paul, because Mr. Frederick, you had
I'm
your
not
hand
going to
up.
start picking winners and losers or east side or west side. This is available for everyone who is a business owner who meets the criteria, and I don't care if they come from Samaria, if they meet the criteria.
I would like Phil's opinion on this, because I don't think you legally can do that. I think that because it's the Liquor Control Commission that approves, we just have to recommend, isn't that correct?
That's right.
Because we have an ordinance, we can follow our ordinance and actually, through that ordinance process, if you remember, not too long ago, how many years ago was that, Trudy, that we this board interviewed applicants?
Just
That's
like-
the process
yeah,
that we
just
should
2 or
go
3.
through, which is
Right.
ordinance 90. We should follow our ordinance.
Right, and if you,
Right.
if
It's
you look
actually-
at ordinance 90, 10, section 10 says review considerations, and then the following section says restrictions on new licenses and permits.
I
So
personally
we
think,
just, and conditions of approving a new license and permit, so it states everything.
I personally think what's in place is really good for Bedford. We get to really choose what we think is gonna,
That's
No.
because we had the foresight to adopt an ordinance many years ago. That gives this board some say in who the next licensee will be.
yeah, so. Okay, any more discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Can you just speak a little bit to the time frame of this? Are you gonna, what to people, what can they expect out there? I mean, should they start turning in applications now, or?
I will be putting out the notice that we have one available. They can pick up applications and submit by the deadline.
Okay.
And then this board will be able to review them after that point.
Okay.
But it'll be officially put in the paper.
Okay, very good. Item 8K, request for approval to reduce the minimum bid on the 2000 Ford Ranger. Most of the people that are interested think it's way overpriced. So I guess I recommend we drop it 1,000. It'd be at 2,500. Or if that's too big of a jump, we can go to 500.
We came down to 25 before, right?
I don't think we've come down on
Didn't-
the Ford Ranger
Didn't you
yet.
have it at 35, we came
Yeah,
down to
we came
25?
down once.
We have come down once?
Yeah.
Lost track.
I made the motion on that, Paul.
It's at 29, yeah, that's right, you did that last meeting, that's right.
I think it came
So-
down to 25 at
So
that
if we
point.
came down to 25, that would be another $400 drop.
Correct.
Suppose we'd have any bidders if we offered to pay them?
I don't know. I could tell you this, I drove the truck the other day because it's been sitting for a while, you know, and the brakes were, you know, I had to get on the brakes quite a bit to get them working again, really.
Dust off?
Get the dust, I mean, they were like, you touched it and the tires locked up, so I mean, it's working fine now, but it took me about 40 minutes to get it to where, you know, so we do need to move it.
I presume you drove it before you hurt your foot.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah. I'm good to drive though. But
Should we drop it even more then? I mean, the cars were barely
Assumption
touched at
of risk.
2,000.
I mean, Blue Book says it's worth, you know, what it's worth.
I realize
think we-
that, but nobody's even,
I guess we could put it on
talking.
Facebook a little more, or, you know, I don't think we should spend any more money on the newspaper.
Right.
But I think if we lower it, we'll put it on Facebook and really try to promote it that way, you know, and
Lower it to?
what do you think, 2,500?
I think that's where we went to.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
That's
I
where
think
we
we ought
went
to
to?
go to 2 and see if we get any takers. 'Cause, I mean, at that point in time, you could part that thing almost and it would be worth it. At 2, I
fine
may
with that.
put in a bid for it, but,
Don't.
no, I get it, obviously. Just trying to stir up some,
Okay, so I'm fine with 2. I think at that price, if, it'll sell, but, is that a motion, Mr. Clemens?
yes, sir, it is.
I'll second.
Motion supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion, I just want to say, there is a 2000 Ford Ranger with 87,000 miles on it. Here's some free advertisement for $2,000. So come put your bids in. Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. I'm going to ask that the board make a change to the agenda to 9 to move it back to 5 minutes. We changed it to 3 minutes because this agenda was so overloaded, we thought we weren't going to have time for the agenda. And we have plenty of time, so I would ask that the board change the 3 minutes back to 5 and give the citizens their allotted time that they came here for.
I agree.
Okay. Do we need a motion, Mr. Goldsmith, to do that?
Yeah, just, you don't need a roll call motion, but a motion would be appropriate.
Ms. Tinnevery,
Changing the-
did you make a
Yeah,
motion?
I move that we move the public comments in number 9 to 5 minutes for each individual.
Okay.
Support.
Motion supported.
All in favor? say
All in
aye.
favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? None. Okay. Number 9, comments from the public. Comments limited to 5 minutes for each individual. Come on up.
But not for him. 3 minutes for him. Just kidding.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a beautiful summer day. I want to thank you for
I need a name.
going ahead with the liquor license. We're going to
Name and
apply
address.
for it,
Yeah.
and
Bill.
I appreciate
Name
you
and
doing
address.
that, because it works
Name and
out.
address.
Need your name and address.
My name's Bill Pearsall, 3610 West Stearns Road. The second comment I was going to make beyond the liquor license is, I own a lot of property in Bedford Township, but I'm not a resident of Bedford Township. Where does that put me as far as different things happening in the township?
Come apply for a board and we'll find out.
I live in Whiteford, And Walter Rule is always asking me, why don't you get on that? I said, no. I know how that starts. I used to be chairman of a union, so I know that. The other comment I've got is on the commercial property, which is about $5 million a year, because Paul and I talked about it some years back, of the 15 million that's residential property. When they have that vote, everybody votes on it. How does that apply to one man, one vote, Mr. Goldsmith?
Doesn't.
Well, I mean, other people can vote on a tax on me, but, because most people are totally unaware of it, that you know, the non-residential, they pay quite a bit higher. I had a gentleman who was complaining about the apartments over on Lewis Avenue and Stearns, and I said, well, you know, they pay a lot more tax. He said, no, they don't. I said, yeah, they do. I know that. And he was surprised at that. Just a couple of observations. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
Thank you for the 5 minutes, Logan Tisdale. I'm going to keep on bringing this up until I get a definitive answer on this here. Since we contract for 10 officers, according to section 1.2 and 1.3 of the contract, we have not gotten 10 officers since September of 2017. We sent information to the Sheriff's Department. They answered the questions on pages 17, 18. They gave us a list of 10 officers that were going to be assigned to Bedford for the year 2018. One of those officers has not worked since July. I think the last time they worked was July of 2017. In April of this year, we only have 8 officers that are actually logging hours between 127.5 hours and 168.5 hours for each month. Contract officers have to give us at least 1,800 hours a year, and they're not doing that. They have to give us 450 hours a quarter, which they're not doing. So basically what's happening, they're backfilling one deputy for the last 6 months. I don't think that's what backfilling is. I don't think the contract says that they're supposed to be backfilling for one whole position. They may be backfilling for people that are off at that time, but not for a whole position. How do you deal with the 35 days if you have 9 people working? How do you compensate for that 35 days we give them? Well, you don't. And the bottom line is last year they fell short over 2,200 hours. The people that were signed according to the contract. They gave us the names, they fell short. I don't understand where 1,800 or 2,200 hours went to. Now answer me this question. Why are our contract officers working in Frenchtown Township for 10 months of the year, logging 45.25 hours in Frenchtown Township? Why are our contract officers assigned to Bedford working Frenchtown Township for 45.25 hours? I went through the Freedom of Information Act and got their activity for 2017. I got 10 months of it. They didn't have 2 of them. And I looked in there and I looked through the contract officers, and we got guys that are contracting down here that are working up in Frenchtown Township. Why are they working up there? It doesn't make any sense to me that we're supposed to get 10 people working here, and they're supposed to give us 1,800 hours, which is 18,000 hours a year. They can't even do that. They're 2,221.25 hours shy of that. That's ridiculous. How do you backfill 2,200 hours? If you're going to have a contract with these people, you better stick with the contract. And as far as I'm concerned, they violated the contract. And I don't see why we continue to contract with them if they're going to do that. I hope the next contract has such tight information in it that if they're off by 1 hour, they don't pay them for them. I know that this last quarter, we were billed for 10 contract officers, because I saw the quarterly thing there, which is what they do every quarter. They bill us for 10 people. And the bottom line is we only got services for 9, but we're paying for 10. So they backfill everybody from detectives to people driving through for a quarter of an hour. Maybe you don't care how they get the hours, but I do care how they get the hours, because somebody driving through here for 15 minutes is not going to do the same work as somebody that's working here for 8 hours. And we deserve better than that, and we're paying for that. You want to be tight on the budget, be tight on this. Pay them only for the hours that the contract officers are actually working. Don't worry about the backfillers. Don't worry about the people that are general fund officers. We don't get any consideration for that. Don't pay them except for the hours that the people that are assigned down here are working. And if they only work 1,400 hours for the quarter, pay them for 1,400 hours for the quarter and not for the 1,800 or whatever it is that we're supposed to be paying them for. So I think the bottom line is it needs to be tighter. And Mr. Pasonic needs to know that these people are not working the hours, the contract people are not working the hours they're supposed to give us. And they should be able to work 1,800 hours. I don't see how they can fall short 2,200 hours for a year. Thank you.
Okay, any more comments from the public?
Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance. First off, I would like to say that if you had saved that license, the liquor license, it should have been set aside for Samaria because they don't have anything. As far as the library, I hope the public supports the millage. This is a valuable resource to the community. In regards to the comments on saving money for jobs that would be done there at the library, I would hope that the supervisor would not be given or allowed an autonomy in this process, that there would be bids, and that it would come under board approval. I believe this is an essential process that we need to have take place in this community, that we don't have anybody with autonomy. Mr. Frederick, I want to thank you for your concern, because I had concerns regarding these boards. There should be no autonomy in nominating a person. The board should be given a list, a full list to choose from. And if there is that board, and they have a preference, let's say the Library Advisory Board had someone that they would prefer to have, then that recommendation should be, it should carry some weight. It should have some value. Maybe tweak your questions. Are you on any other boards? Do you have a relationship to a board member in any fashion? I don't care if it's a babysitter, a church member, or a spouse. I believe that should be part of our questions. Businesses, they do pay taxes. I'm not going to degrade that, but they don't have a silent voice. They use the BBA. I frequently ask the businesses to form a consortium in downtown Temperance, because the reason we had to have the Temperance Action Committee was because they did not have a voice here, because we didn't have a DDA. And I had asked and asked and asked and was turned down, couldn't get anybody to initiate that. So I have a lot of history with that downtown Temperance issue. They may not be making decisions, but things are happening, and I don't approve of how it is happening. To that respect, one of the Barron girls is approved to be on the board. The other one is not an approved member. So in that respect, you have Abe from Sunoco and the one girl from Barron's who are not the residents. There is a way to have a voice as a public person. So to that respect, they're not silent at all. And Trudy, I will be getting with you later this week. I want to know where it stands, my complaint regarding the misconduct and ethical misconduct, and where it's at as far as getting to the state's Attorney General office. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
Dale Track, 2842 Sanibel Lane. First of all, on the liquor license, I'd just make a suggestion, to help pay for roads. Might want to hold on to that license and just put a beer and wine garden out in back and just a thought. Anyway, my comment tonight is basically based on comments made during the budget meeting. We wouldn't have known that unless Mr. Peroni would have gone Facebook Live with it. I have a problem with the fact that it wasn't recorded this year. And tonight's discussion, which I wouldn't have known about had this meeting not been broadcast, that several of you board members were not happy with the process of the budgeting. So how would the public know unless we were to show up? I could tell you, out of that Facebook Live that was done, there was almost 1,000 views. People are very busy in their lives. As you know, you're having trouble getting people to fill the boards. So I can't understand with the fact that after last year, Mr. Welling came in, May 4th meeting, budget meeting last year, and made a presentation, talked about transparency and how we're going to go forward with the new technology and whatnot. For me, I thought it was a natural assumption that those meetings were going to be broadcast this year. We spent the extra money on the technology, spent the extra money on a program director, and it boggles my mind that they weren't, because you look at the budget meetings, and what you do in those meetings, you know, for the most part, they're pretty long, pretty tedious. Some people might think that they're boring. But what you do in those budget meetings is shown throughout the year. You know, you discuss those items throughout the year in your agenda here. Okay, you'll make statements. Well, we talked about it at the budget. Is it in the budget? Those kind of things right there. Now, there was an objection by Mr. Francis and second by Mrs. Hirschberger that it shouldn't be broadcast because of the possibility of the what-ifs. Again, almost every meeting you have, you talk about hypotheticals and what-ifs. So to debate those or in a public forum, be it filmed or not filmed, transparency, we shouldn't have a problem with that when we're discussing the people's work, and it should be done with modern technology. Not everybody can attend meetings. And it just gives us some insight on your process and where our money's going. So it was very frustrating for me. Like I said, the what-ifs, it just boggled my mind. And, you know, it goes back to what Mr. Francis said in that meeting last year. If we're going to do it right. Well, I thought doing it right was we'd come back in those budget meetings, especially after the outstanding display that Mr. Steiner had, his presentation about how to display the numbers. I thought all those spreadsheets were going to be put up, and as you went along, you'd be able to have an understanding of what's going on with the people's money. So I would like to have some more consideration, and I would like to see those meetings taped next year. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Seeing none. Comments from township board members. Mr. Clemens?
Thank you. I try to be very careful when I sit here as a trustee not to make personal comments or comments that aren't really township related, but tonight I'm going to break my own rule. I have a senior who graduated this year from Bedford High School, and I could not be more proud of him. In addition to all of the Bedford senior class. So I want to say congratulations to all the seniors at Bedford High School. For those that didn't see the article, of the 355-ish students that graduated, over 180 were 3.0 GPA or better. Bedford, for the third year in a row, won a regional award for the amount of scholarship money received. Bedford's competing with much larger high schools in that arena, and even though we are a smaller high school, for the third year in a row, had over $1 million in scholarships donated to seniors graduating. So I want to say congratulations to the whole senior class. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Predrick?
Two things. One, I was going to talk about the scholarship night. I represented the Bedford Community Foundation at that presentation. And the Bedford Community Foundation granted 34 scholarships to seniors at the Bedford School, $28,000 worth of scholarships. I know I've been a member of that community for over 20 years now, and one year we only had $500. This year we had 28,000. And so as I traveled around the state, when I was both a supervisor and also when I was a county commissioner, they'd say, "Where are you from?" I'd say, "Well, I'm from Bedford Township." "Ah, we know about your wrestling teams, and we know about your volleyball teams, and we know about sometimes your football team and sometimes your basketball team." And I said, "Yeah, that's very true. But when you stand in front of the scholarship of the Bedford school system, you realize there's a lot of smart people here too." And so I've always been proud to stand there for, well, now it's been 20 years, and pass out scholarships. And I notice we have a scout here this evening. So would you come up to the podium and tell us why you're here? Sorry, Mr. Supervisor.
Hello, my name is Paul. We moved here a couple of months ago. I'm working on a merit badge, citizenship in the community. I needed to come here to this meeting and learn about some problems we were having in our communities, and learn about some different
Take your time, you're fine.
different opinions on such things, and I'll explain that to my counselor, who is back in North Carolina and who I will contact through phone and email. I would like to thank you for all that you do for the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you do for the community.
Beach.
Y'all set?
Yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
Very good. Ms. Standerberry?
Well, thank you, Paul, for everything you do and your Boy Scout, being kind, and so don't move back to North Carolina, stay here though, okay? Okay. I just have a couple of comments. One is, with regard to the boards and commissions, I understand the whole thing, if you pay taxes, you should have a voice, but I also agree that the BBA is a voice. However, every one of these meetings are public meetings. Anyone, any business owner can go to the meeting and give their input. Being a member of that committee, or having a vote on that committee, or making a recommendation, to me, isn't any greater than being able to attend the committee and give your input and try to work with the committee to try and get things moved in the direction you'd like to see them. So I don't know that being a member of a committee has any greater effect than being able to attend. So they're all open to the public and can be attended. I share Mr. Tisdale's concern about the contract. It's been quite a while since we heard that, the sheriff's people were here, we had the discussion, you said you were going to make some adjustments, and, I don't know.
It's on the next agenda.
Okay, just because I said it, or?
No, because this agenda was so
Okay,
full, we
okay.
pulled
I want to
four
think it's
items off.
because I said it, okay, so.
No, sorry.
The other thing is, the trustee, Mr. Frederick, made a comment earlier, and I'm sure that it sparked the ears of many people in the public that I think we need to have clarified. You said the building inspector, Bedford Township, wired your house. Was that while you were a member of the board?
No, it was before I was a member of the board. Well,
Okay,
my
I
house was
just wanted
built
to
in
clarify
'94.
that.
I didn't start here till '96.
Okay.
And I
just
cussed
wanted
him
to
out
clarify
every
that.
once in a while, too.
That you didn't hire, or you didn't have some public person making sure that, people are going to wonder, I'm just saying. Okay, that's it.
Mr. Steiner?
Paul, I know you came to the podium, and pretty new for a young guy to come up to a podium with people, and the whole community's watching you. A lot of kudos to you for that. And I look forward to when you turn 18 to 20 years old, you can replace both of these two Pauls by yourself. I can see your brains are just growing.
And me too.
But welcome to Bedford, too, as a new resident. Other than that, congratulations to the seniors of 2018. And then the last thing, again, is committees. I will still go back to saying that, yes, businesses do have a BBA they can go to. They do have a voice they can come into the podium, et cetera. That's coming in as a one-way street, though, giving my opinion if I'm up at the podium. But being able to sit down with a committee and plan and work, that is a different perspective. Just coming in and giving your opinion, what you'd like to see or not see, because believe me, there's a lot of people that have opinions that it's an opinion that's not even doable. A lot of people have great ideas and they think, oh, let's do this, this, and this, but they have no plan. You know, the old saying is, if you got a problem, don't come to me with the problem, come to me with the solution. Ask Mr. Track. He asked for quite a few years there. Come to me with a solution, board. Come give me a solution how you're going to handle this healthcare bit. He came with ideas. You know, that's just it. Now, granted, he was diligent. He came to every meeting. But, you know, a lot of people aren't going to take and come to every single meeting when it comes to planning. So, again, I'll stick to that. If somebody's paying tax dollars as a business or a resident owner, I think we should give them the opportunity. Granted, I would like to see residents have generally first opportunity, but as a business owner, huge taxpayer, I think they should have some kind of voice. Again, as I stated, and you heard Mr. Was it Bill Pearsall make the comment, he owns how much property in Bedford? He has no say how much tax gets put on his property, because he can't vote by that piece of property. He's only one man on that entire property. So that's my spiel for tonight. And again, congratulations to the seniors of Bedford and all other communities that have graduating seniors. Do it safely, be smart, don't text, don't drink. And if you happen to do that underage, do us a big favor, don't drive.
And I would like to add, because of Dale's persistence, we all, at least the full time, are at 20% of the healthcare, you know, so his persistence worked. Mr. Francis?
Because of the lateness of the hour, I'd like to echo everything that's been said so far, because I agree with it all, but I'm not going to repeat it. It's ludicrous to repeat something that's already been said. We talk about a lot of things at a board meeting like this. Some of it affects people's lives. Most of the decisions we make in some fashion affect the lives of people that we are elected to serve. And I think we just need to be aware of that when we make decisions like that, or when we talk with each other. We're allowed to disagree with each other. This is America. We're allowed to disagree, but we're not, in my opinion, allowed to be disagreeable when we disagree. Everyone has a right to his own opinion. We need to respect that. We've signed it hanging on the board downstairs on the wall, where we've committed to each other to respect each other's opinions. Sometimes we lose sight of that in the heat of the moment. We need to continue to work on that. And I'm just as guilty for aiming at myself.
Ms. Hirschberger?
A couple things. The AV applications have been mailed out. If you've not received one, please give my office a call. Ballots will go out the last week of June. The newsletters should be in the Bedford Press. You should be getting them today or tomorrow. And last thing, personal thing, just like TC said, I want to congratulate my daughter and son-in-law, Ashlyn and Chad, on their new baby Friday. I'm a grandma again to Landon.
Okay. Well, I tried to keep my notes short since I thought we were going to go over, but I did hand everybody out a packet from the, I think it's a quarterly MTA meeting that we attend. SEMCOG was there. We got a 911 update. And so I did hand out a packet about that meeting to everybody. TAP grant update, we are going to find out here in the next couple weeks. I got a really encouraging email yesterday. They're coming back with questions about specifics. So that it says a lot to me that, hey, they're not just passing by us. So I'm really hopeful that we're going to get that grant. June 30th is the Bedford Bike Cruise that Team COG is partnered with a group of people to get this bike ride in Bedford, but it was postponed due to rain. And Phil, if you want to comment, I mean, according to my conversation I had with you, there is no ethics violation. I know you said you were going to send out a letter to the board or whatever, but
I'll be sending a communication to the board relative to that, and then with the steps that are provided for by law. So we'll address that, yes.
Okay. But I just wanted, since it was brought up tonight, I thought, and the police, I mean, it's every meeting we talk about this. I will say, it is on the next agenda to talk about the changes. There's a lot of great changes that we had in the meetings, but I could tell you this, after this process, I feel real comfortable in the level of service and the hours that we're getting. With the backfill and everything that we're provided with, we're not getting gypped. We're not getting cheated. I think we're getting what we pay for and then some. So I mean, I guess it's something we're just not going to see eye to eye on, but hopefully after the next meeting, when you see some of the language change, it helps clarify things a lot. But like I said, I was open-minded the whole time, and as of right now, what we've gone through, I feel real comfortable in what we're getting. So, with no further comments, we stand adjourned.